In this video we're going to talk about LDtk and how you can use it to create a world map. In case you've never heard of it, LDtk is a level design toolkit created by the guy that did Dead Cells. It's a really awesome tool and it's totally free to use. By far one of the most useful features is the auto rendering tool, whereby you basically just sort of draw a grid in the editor and it automatically works out what tiles to use and where. And this is the thing we're going to talk about today. Because we're using Godot, and Godot requires a blank folder in order to create the project, the first thing we need to do is create a new project in Godot. We click on New Project, and then we go and find where we're going to create our project. That's all we need at this stage, so we can close Godot and come back later. The next thing we need are some art assets. I'm going to use this freely available tileset here. I'll put the link in the description below, but of course you can create your own using whatever tool you like. Simply drop your tileset into the folder that you created with Godot. In LDtk we're going to create a new map and we're going to put it in the folder that we created. We give the map a name. The first thing we need to do is resize our level so that it is roughly the same sort of size as the game that we're going to create in Godot. To do this, we go into current level settings and we define the size here. I'm going to go for 320 by 192 because I'm going to be using a 16 by 16 pixel grid, and 320 by 192 happens to be 20 by 12 cells. We now need to create a tileset. Click on the Tilesets option, click on Add, and find the tileset that we downloaded into our folder. You can call the tileset whatever you like. I'm just going to call mine Dungeon. LDtk should automatically detect the tile size and layout, but feel free to tweak these settings as you wish. Next up, we need to create a layer. We close this, we go and find our new layers, and we are going to click on Add a new integer grid. This is where the magic starts to happen in LDtk. Crucially, in order to use this in Godot, we are going to call our integer grid collisions with an S. This becomes apparent later on, but it's basically because the add-on looks for this layer when it's generating the collisions within Godot. Within the grid values section, we are going to add a layer for walls, and we're going to give it a color. Pick whatever color you like. I'm going to pick a red color. In the tileset option, we're going to choose the tileset that we have created. Whilst we're still in this section, we're going to create another layer. This is going to be an auto layer, and we're going to call this floors. The auto layer source is going to be the collision layer, and the auto layer tileset is going to be the tileset for the dungeon. What we want to do on the floor layer is to basically fill in everything that isn't a collision with a new tile. So to do this, we're going to click on Edit Rules, and this brings up the rules for the floors layer. We're going to create a new group and we're going to call it floors. This gives us the ability to add a new rule by clicking on this little plus right here. We click the plus and we need to define what tile we are going to apply for this particular rule. You click on this and you go and find the tile that you want to use. I'm going to use this unbroken floor tile right here. Select it, then go back to the rule itself. As you can see, it's filled in everything with that particular tile. But what we want to do specifically is fill in anything that isn't a wall. So we're going to select the walls layer. Now, if we single click with the left mouse button, you can see it's now looking for anything that is a wall for its featured tile. If we right click, it removes that rule, and if we right click again, it's now looking for anything that isn't a wall specifically. We're going to set it so that any tile that isn't a wall is going to be filled with this tile. We click off and we're going to add a new rule. We're going to choose tiles again, but this time we're going to pick all of the broken tiles. We're going to do this by control clicking on all of these broken tiles right here. Click off, and as you can see, it's cycling through those random tiles. We're going to set the same rule by selecting the walls and saying anything that is not a wall has that rule applied. We click off the panel, and as you can see, now every tile is a broken tile. Now we don't want every single tile to be a broken tile, we only want some of the tiles to be a broken tile. Within the actual rule itself, there are some additional options. One of them is Perlin filtering. If we turn that on, you can see now what's happening is some of the tiles are broken and some of the tiles are not broken. This might not be quite right for you, so we want to be able to tweak this and play around with it a little bit. So first thing we're going to do is right click on our Perlin filtering and we get additional options. If we change the scale down to something ridiculously small, as you can see, the granularity decreases. We want a more granular approach, so we're going to set our scale to something fairly high. We close that, and it still doesn't look very good, so we're going to change the value from 100% to being about 40%. So now about 40% of the tiles that are applicable within that Perlin noise filter will be broken. Okay, let's get some walls in here. We're going to close the rules for the floor. We're going to open up the rules for the collisions. We create a new group. We're going to call it walls, and we're going to add a new rule for this. Now with this particular map, what we actually want when we are applying a wall is to actually use a blank tile. So I'm going to use this blank tile right here, and I'm going to set my layer to be walls, and I want it so that when there is a wall present, it's going to render it as a blank tile. Click out of the panel, and now what we can do is draw a level. So if we wanted some walls down here and maybe across here, and as you can see, as I'm applying the walls, so the floors are disappearing, because the rules for the floor states that it's only going to do this when a wall is not present. So we're going to draw a bit of a level, something like that. And obviously, you can define this however you like. Now we need to add some additional rules to the wall. Create a new wall, and we're going to select the middle of the wall here. We're going to select the walls layer, and we're going to make it so that whenever there is a wall tile with nothing underneath, then we are going to render a wall. So what this is doing is it's effectively applying this rule to only the tiles that are sat just above the floor, effectively. So when the tile is a wall and the tile underneath it is not a wall, then it's going to use this tile in the level. I hope that makes sense. To add a bit of flair and decoration to this, we're going to duplicate the rule by right-clicking and clicking on Duplicate Rule. We're going to go into our other wall, and we're going to go and find some different tiles. Middle click allows you to pan around, and you can see what you've got here in this particular tile set. Most of these things are for the characters. We're going to use some of these whole tiles here and the flag tiles. So I'm going to click on the flag tile, and then I'm going to control click and control click to select these whole tiles over here. And as before, it's replaced every single tile that we had previously defined. We're going to reduce this though to be about 40%, like we did with the floor. And obviously you could use the Perlin noise as well if you wanted to, depending on what your level looked like. Another great feature of LDtk is the ability to set multiple tiles when a rule is met. We're going to do that now. First thing we're going to do is duplicate our original wall rule. We're going to go into it and we're going to change the random tiles drop down to be rectangle of tiles. And we need to set this little blue dot to be the top middle of the tile. When we click on the tile, we're going to find something that we're going to use as our multiple tiles or our rectangle of tiles, and we're going to pick this blue water thing here. So as you can see, I've now got these water tiles here and here, but it's missing the tile underneath. This is because back in our layers section, our floor is actually above our collisions layer. So to sort this out, simply drag that down so that it is beneath the collisions layer, and now you can see our fountain looks correct. Going back into the collision rules, we can change the amount of water features we have by just simply increasing the percentage, or again you could use the purling noise if you wanted to. I'm going to drop this down to about 20%. Just to make it a bit more interesting, we're going to duplicate this. We're going to go into our new one, we're going to go into our rectangle of tiles, and instead we're going to select this slime hole thing. So now we've got slime holes and we've got water features, and we can manipulate these however we want to make it look roughly how we want it to look. The tops of our walls don't look very good at the moment, so we're going to sort that out with another new rule. Random tiles. We're going to select the top of our wall here that correlated to our middle wall. The grid for this is a little bit more complicated to describe. Basically, we need to be able to look at more tiles than we were previously, and we can do that easily by using this drop down menu here. 5x5 should be good enough for us. Now what we're saying here is we don't want the wall to be the tile that we're looking at, so we don't want a wall there. We want a wall beneath it, and we want no wall underneath that. And as you can see, that's put the toppers on the top of all of our walls. Now obviously you can go through LDtk and you can define as many rules for as many things as you can possibly think of. You can define all of these side walls if you wanted to, all of the side toppers, you can define corners. You can spend hours and hours doing this, but as a simple explanation, that is effectively how you use LDtk to create a map within a world. Just to drum home the benefits of this, I'm going to simply jump back to the grid itself, and if I decide I don't want this block here, for example, I can simply remove the walls that were there with a right click, and then that's filled it in. And if I left click, it's obviously going to draw stuff back in, and you can really easily define a level or draw a level by literally single left clicking or single right clicking to remove. And it's just a very, very easy to use map making system. So the next step is to use that LDtk file in Godot. We're going to be using the Levi-Gilbert Godot LDtk import add-on, which is excellent. There is, however, one issue outstanding with it, and that is the rectangle of tiles doesn't import properly. So those fountains and those slime tiles aren't going to work properly. Basically what it does is it smushes it to be whatever the last tile was within the rectangle. Fortunately, I've worked out how to fix that, and there is in fact a pull request open to resolve the problem. So in 1.1.3 you will find that it doesn't work quite right, but hopefully by the time you're looking at this video this will have been merged in, and we'll be using 1.1.4. Anyway, to use the add-on, simply click on code and click on download zip. and this will download the zip file, which you then have to extract. In the extracted zip file, you will see a folder structure that looks like this. We're interested in the add-ons directory. There are two things in here, gut and LDtk importer, but we're just going to copy the entire folder and drop it into our Godot project. In Godot itself, the first thing we need to do is set our tileset to be pixel art. Simply select it, click on import, and I find it's easier to just use the preset of 2D pixel and then re-import. You can also set this as the default for all textures, which we're going to do. In project, project settings, and plugins, we're going to enable the LDtk importer. And while we're in here, we're going to sort out our general settings. So we're going to go into general and window. We're going to set the width and height to be 320 by 180. And in case you're wondering why I've chosen this, it's because what we're actually using is 1280 divided by 4 and 720 divided by 4. So 320 by 180, and we're going to set the test width and height to be 1280 by 720. We're going to scroll down and set our mode to be viewport, and our aspect is going to be keep. We can close this panel now, and as you can see, we've got our dungeon LDtk file down here. We're going to select it, and making sure the import panel is open, we're going to import collisions and re-import. Double click on the LDtk file and create a new inherited scene. If we zoom in, we should see our level exactly as we had it in LDtk, and because I'm using the amended version of my code, you can see that my fountains and slime pools are working correctly. We can click on the scene tab, and just to show you what this has done, the room that we had in LDtk, which we had called level_0, that was just the default name, you can rename that to anything you like, is set as a node, and then we have a tile map for the floors, and we have a tile map for the collisions layer. And because we called it collisions, we also have this static body 2D with absolutely loads of collision shapes inside of it, and each one of those, as you can see around the edge, they are the collisions with the walls. So we're going to save that scene, we'll call it dungeon, that's fine, and now we're good to actually create the game. Just before we do that, we can click on play, and it says obviously no main scene has been defined. We're going to select the current scene, and as it loads up you can see our level looks pretty good. One thing I'm going to suggest that you change is the background colour being the default grey looks a bit naff. So what we're going to do is we're going to set it to be the dark colour on the tiles. So to do that, we go into project and project settings. We go to general, rendering, environment, and we change our default clear colour. I'm just going to use the picker, and I'm going to select the sort of dark colour within the tile itself. Close, save and run, and I think that looks much better. In our downloaded asset pack there is a subfolder called frames. In here are a bunch of additional assets, including a cool little knight character which we're going to use as our player. So we're going to scroll down here and we're going to find all of these knight M's and simply copy them into a new folder, cool player, and drop them in there. So we're going to create a really simple player. We're going to start off by creating a kinematic body 2D node. We're going to call that node player. We're going to add an animated sprite because we're using individual frames, and we're going to transform that on the y-axis by -11. In the frames property we're going to create a new sprite frames and go into it, and we're going to find our idle frames. We're going to rename this to be idle, and we're going to change the speed of the animation to be 10 frames a second. Make sure that it's looping. We create a new animation which we're going to call run. Drag in the run frames, again 10 frames a second, and looping. We jump back to the animated sprite. We're going to make sure that it has selected the correct animation, which it has, and we're going to set plane to be true. We need a collision shape. Which is going to be a capsule shape, which we rotate and scale down to fit. Something like that. We save that in our player directory, and then we can create a new script. We're going to replace the script here with one I made earlier. It's pretty simple. I'll just quickly run through it. What we're going to do is on ready we're going to get the animated sprite value, and we're going to set up some variables here. On the physics process we're going to get our input direction, which we're going to normalize, and that input direction we're going to then check to see if it is 0. If it's 0, we're going to simply play the idle animation, and if it is not, then we're going to play the run animation. Then we set the velocity lerping towards the input direction, and we move and slide in that direction. The only other little bit that's interesting is in here we are going to flip the sprite if you're going to the left. And if you're going to the right, then you don't flip the sprite. We now need to add our player to our level. So we simply instance the child scene, and we should be able to test the game. Oh, well, actually no, we need to make sure that he's not, yeah, he's in the top right over here. So let's plop him somewhere in the middle, and now we can test the scene. So here's our little knight character, and we can run around, and we collide with the walls as you would expect. Now the only thing that will be slightly jarring is the fact that, as you can see here, if he is what should be behind the wall topper, you can see he's over the top of it. So we just need to sort that out pretty quick. So to sort this out, we go into our collisions tile map. We click on the cell drop down, and we enable the Y sort option here. The other thing we need to do is change the tile origin to be bottom left. We need to change the top level node to be a different type. We're going to use Y sort. Don't think it really matters, but it enables us to change the next level down to also be a Y sort, and that does matter. Now if we save and play, our little character goes behind the wall tops. And so there you have it. A really simple game created using LDtk and imported into Godot. I'd like to thank you very much for watching. If you've enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a like and subscribe for more content. Also, let me know what you think about this sort of tutorial series. I'd be really interested to get your feedback. Stick a comment in the section below. Did you enjoy this? Was it informative? Are there any areas that you'd like some more information about? Anything like that? That'd be really great. And I will catch you in the next one.